So today I'm talking on the subject matter shadow AI being the new Exfiltration channel. My name is Chijioke Okoye, by the way. I'm a security analyst and I work for Landmark Information Group. I think we're just somewhere around the corner here, somewhere in Exeter. And I know we have offices in Reading and the likes in Bristol as well. So a couple of years ago, roughly about 2 years ago, I was tasked with, so before I go there, my background, I started as an IT support person, then from there I moved to IT infrastructure, then from there to cybersecurity. In delving cybersecurity, I started as a penetration tester. I'm actually a certified ethical hacker, but over the past couple of years, I found myself doing more of governance, risk, and compliance. So I sort of sit in between that technical and the management side of things. So a couple of years ago, I was tasked with, based on an audit finding, I was tasked with implementing data loss prevention for the company where I work. But to do that, we're about, give and take, sometimes about 1,000 strong staff strength, and the company is roughly 30 plus years. It was not possible to just implement data loss prevention without seeing what was coming in or what was going out, basically. So it took me about a year. And disclaimer, we're Microsoft environment, so a lot of this will be based on Microsoft things and things like that. It took me about a year of, so basically what I did was create the policies, implement the policies in Purview, then turned it on in simulation mode. The reason why I did that was basically it sees everything coming in and going out. It alerts you, but it doesn't block, it doesn't encrypt, it doesn't enforce anything, basically. And for me, it was a really it was a revealing moment of my life, really. You'd be shocked what comes in and what goes, especially what goes out of organizations. And I guess that made me a champion of data loss prevention, basically. So I started talking on it, talking about it, encouraging people to do what they possibly can to ensure that their data is safe. You'd be, and kindly speaking, not to knock any employee or anybody, right? Oftentimes they genuinely have no idea that what they're doing, either by way of putting it on the cloud or emails or shared drives and things like that, actually exfiltrating data in one way or the other. That said, this is what we're going to be looking at, the governance gaps that are there today, what controls exist and where and how they work, where most organizations actually sit on the level. I've separated them into about 4 different levels. The real gaps, even with good controls in place, and then regaining visibility without blocking innovation. Unfortunately, or fortunately for some people, artificial intelligence is the hot button topic today. There is no room you step into that no one talks about artificial intelligence. Although sometimes I always like to talk about the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Oftentimes, what we entrust to artificial intelligence can actually be done, or what we actually entrust or put into these AI tools can actually also be done with machine learning. But because we feel that, oh, AI is the hot thing today, but some things might just be achieved by mapping A to B, mapping Z to D, and it will still work as well as, or maybe sometimes might even work better than the artificial intelligence tools work. But yeah, who am I to judge? The governance gaps, out of a survey that was done in the US by Cyber News, it found out that 59% of employees today use AI tools not approved by IT or by management. Right, 29% of organizations have no AI acceptable use policy, and by Hacker News, 40% of files uploaded into Gen AI contain personally identifiable information or payment card information. Even in the mature environment, the governance gap between tool deployment and AI policy is real and growing. I'll give you an instance, right? So a couple of years ago, when I implemented data loss prevention and we went to CAB and then we turned it on. One of the controls we put in place was so that when people paste data in the browsers, it intercepts us at that point, it reads the data and know if this is good to go or not. That thing takes a couple of seconds, sometimes couple of microseconds to process and then see if this has the data you're looking for or not before it checks it complete and things like that. But then the business cried back. Basically, staff cried back. Oh, this is taking up our time. Like I said, it's a couple of microseconds. So I went back to my manager and said, oh, this is what people are saying. Then he said, okay, you know what you're going to do? Turn it off at this point so that it doesn't roll back years of what we've worked on. So at that point, we had to disable that part of which is basically scanning what's pasted in browsers. But what am I trying to say? The reason why I'm trying to say this is that despite how mature we are in terms of data loss prevention, there's now a gap somewhere, because at that particular point in time, we were not scanning what people were putting on their or pasting in their browsers, basically. This is just some further statistics about a breakdown of some of the stats that I showed you a couple of ago. Note that this survey was done in the US. We're going to come to what's actually obtainable in the United Kingdom. There's 59% of employees use AI tools, and this is the breakdown. More interesting is this: the direct manager is aware and doesn't support it. So basically, they're aware, and yeah, it's open season, right? Use AI as much as you possibly can if it helps your work, right? But that's not actually how to go about it. This is also the one of the 75% of employees who use unapproved AI tools share sensitive data. Here you can see some of the data that are being shared. If we recall, a couple of years ago, there was the story or the news of the Samsung employee who pasted proprietary data in ChatGPT and the like. So these are scenarios where, by any definition of the word good, cannot be good, right? It's a very but yeah, we'll look at what we should do and how we should get in front of some of these things. Executives and senior managers are most likely to use unapproved AI tools for work. So, being a compliance person, basically, sometimes there's something referred to as management body language, right? Where policies or execution comes from the top down to say, if management has no problems, right, using AI tools, of course, it tells you that they don't really care. And of course, if you're if your employees are learning by watching you, obviously they will also want to do the same. After all, it improves productivity. 23% of employers do not have an official policy regarding the use of personal AI tools for work. In fact, they have no policy whatsoever regarding any AI tools for work. So it's not just personal tools, although that's part of what we're talking about here today as well. Then coming to the United Kingdom, there was a survey that showed that 48% of employers know or suspect that employees in the organization are using AI tools that have not been officially approved. There is 64% are concerned unregulated AI use could lead to data security and compliance risk. 34% of businesses do not have formal policies or guidelines governing AI usage, and then 37% have not communicated to staff their expectations of how AI should be used. First of all, it tells us that there's a gap somewhere, right? So if I don't know what's expected of me at work, then it's open season. I know there are also, we won't talk about the controls that are in place or controls that have been implemented. We'll see how organizations try to get in front of it. But the truth that is there is if you don't tell me what's expected, I would not know what's expected, and I would assume that, yeah, everything can go or everything flies, right? So shadow AI, what's the shadow IT 2.0? We're just reliving that moment where I told you a couple of years ago, I started working in the bank in 2007, where there wasn't much of those controls, and I was an IT person, and then we saw people who, some for productivity sakes, some just for keeping themselves busy while they're at work, install tools that they have not been approved by IT. We tried a lot to get in front of all those things, and then that was where things like joining systems to domain, having those, we used to call it domain, maybe policies in the domain to ensure that people are not able to install softwares that or you have IT people come around to install those softwares. And we're seeing the same thing with AI now, because I'm not going to go into that, but so what happens is when you said you can't use maybe ChatGPT or Claude and the likes, right? And I really want it for work. What I'll do is I'll find another way to get to use it that you're not aware of, and that's not what we are trying to encourage. We're trying to encourage people to get in front of it, basically, right? It's here to stay, and there's probably nothing anyone can do about it, whether you're in agreement or not. So common tools, we have the personal ChatGPT, the Claude, the Gemini accounts, and then there are browser extensions today with AI capabilities, or managed coding assistants such as the Copilot, Cursor, Codex, in some instances. Consumer summarization and doc analysis tools. We've seen all those things today. You know, there were recent events with respect to OpenClaw, the ones who use it for meeting summarizations, where all those things are going into AI tools, basically. Unofficial API integration built by developers. And then we'll look at what's missing. No enterprise login or audit trail, because if I'm using my personal ChatGPT or Claude, the organization has no idea of what I'm pasting in any of those tools, right? And those are part of the things that we're trying to campaign against. No policy enforcement or data classification. Excuse me. Bypasses endpoint DLP if accessed via browser paste. I told the story here of how we didn't get in front of that really early. And no visibility into model training, data retention, and no contractual data protection with the vendor. So because once your data is out there, if you don't have, because let's take the instance of the one that happened to Samsung. It was personal. Samsung didn't have a contract with ChatGPT in any way, right? So what has been pasted there? First of all, not only does OpenAI now have access to that code base, they also if it's a personal account, and more so if it's a trial account, it's open to they can use it to train their models, to better improve their models and things like that. So those are part of the things that we need to be very wary of. So really quickly, we've classified this thing into 4 levels. Level 1 are small businesses who have maybe either by ways of budgeting or something, have none of these tools in place, right? To either implement data loss prevention or to implement web filtering and content filtering and the rest of them. All they have is just a basic firewall, maybe email, DLP. Then the level 2 are people who have web filtering. They have partial visibility, right? But there are still gaps in terms of visible logs. AI isn't flagged, and these are probably the mid-market and some enterprises. Some have Zscaler, maybe proxy deployed, but not specifically with respect to AI in the policy. And then the 3rd level is the AI-aware controls deployed, but unmanaged devices. So in environments where they're allowed to bring in their own devices or work from home, they don't have. You begin to lose a lot of some of those controls as against if they were working in the offices and stuff like that. And then the 4th level is the full governance AI program, but some of the gaps is, unfortunately, you cannot do it with insider threats via sanctioned AI tools, because we're going to look at some of the insider threats that are available today and how they can harm the business. But yeah, these are mature enterprises with all the tools in place, all the controls in place, but still there might be a way that data can leak from that particular environment. So the AI exfiltration part. So really quickly here we have the user who pastes whatever it is. It could be, I think this might be the good time to talk about the 3 scenarios, right? So you have a scenario 1 where the user says, I want to summarize an email. Please help me word this email better, right? And then I've erroneously pasted personal identity, PII or PCIs or code base that I should not have pasted into the browser. Or you also have the developer who wants to either debug a code or make his code much more better his or her code, right? And then they paste that code, or they're using things like Codex and other tools that are meant to help developers develop. And then once they paste that into the AI website, they've lost complete control over. Now that the first three are the only places where organizations still have control of that data. Once it's pasted into the AI, once it's pasted into the website, and it has gone for processing, that data is completely lost to the night. Not lost, but it's now out there in the wild. It could be with anybody really. It could be someone could have intercepted it. It could be with the AI companies, right? And where they're now processing that data and then using it for whatever it is they want to use it for. But unfortunately, because today we don't know what the retention policy is, how they train those data, do they anonymize the data, what are they using those data for, how long do they keep it? We'll have no idea how that is. Although, maybe not, but yeah, later there's also the ethical use of AI and things like that. But this is what we try to get ahead of, encourage organizations basically to. But like every other thing that we have done in security, is one of the things is user awareness, right? To train users on the ethical use of AI. Yeah, you probably want to be more efficient. You're drafting this email and you want it to come out better. Anonymize the data. It can be Dear Jane Doe or Dear John Doe. If there's a place where you want PCI or PII, remove those things and then do include something else there so that either your customer's data is not pasted into the AI platform. So critical gap, regardless of maturity level, the personal devices, they bring your own devices. People who are working from home and mobile hotspots bypass every on-premise or agent-dependent control. An employee working from home on a personal laptop is invisible to all of the above. Some of the above, even when I have to connect maybe to work via VPN, there are also the incognito modes. Some of those things, proxies and web filtering and web content cannot see what's going on through incognito. So we also need to be wary of how we process that. And then there's Purview browser extension. Remember, like I said, we're in Microsoft environment, so a lot of this will have to do Microsoft. Purview browser extension, the Chrome Edge, Firefox extensions exist, and they do detect paste events into AI sites. But this has to be properly configured and deployed, like I mentioned earlier, else it's better you don't even have it there in place. So we're going to look at the three types of users, which is the accidental, the unaware, and then the one who actually wants to exploit the data. And then we'll have the efficient employee just paste the client summary into ChatGPT to improve phrasing, right? No idea, it's not, like I said, some of them don't even have an idea that what they are doing should not even be done. Right, and like I said, if you don't have a policy in place to state how AI should be used, when it should be used, and all that, then of course it's open season. I'll just assume that whatever I do works. Then there is the unaware insider, regularly uses personal AI accounts for work, doesn't know inputs may be retained or trained in data. So I'll be frank with you, right? So what we've done at work is that we've said no AI, right? No ChatGPT, no Claude. We blocked all that from our web filtering. But then we cannot do away with Copilot because we're in a Microsoft environment. So we were allowed to use Copilot to do some of those things. But personally, I'm not a big fan of Copilot, either maybe by way of the results it gives me or the outputs. I don't like it. So I prefer to maybe go back to my ChatGPT, which I'm paying for, a professional. So what am I saying? I still fall within some of these things, probably because I don't like the output of one of the AI. I'm not going to use my own personal AI. Although being aware, what I then do is to anonymize the data, like I said, remove some of the things that I don't want out there in the wild, and yeah, but I still get my result at the end of the day. And then there is a third person who's the weaponized insider, uses normal AI behavior patterns to deliberately cover whatever he or she is doing. Because they know that the organization is not aware of what's going on, or then they can actually use that to actually exfiltrate data. And these are the people that we're supposed to be worried about. Yeah, we're just worried about the unaware person and the efficient employee, because don't forget the recent times, some of the recent hacks that have happened recently have actually been based on users who are unaware. We will talk about things like MFA fatigue, for instance. We had a couple of hacks a couple of years ago. I don't want to mention names, but who have unknowingly given out either maybe their second factor authentication to malicious people, or sometimes you go online and you see I don't even know if I should say this in 2026, but sometimes you go online and you see, although some of those platforms are now getting ahead of it, where someone uploads a code to places like GitHub, right, and then you see the password. Very recently, I saw one, because, and it was erroneously, but what happened was, there was an IP we used to use on one of our DNSs, and we no longer own that IP, and I think the cloud platform assigned it to another user. But because we have a handling DNS, which means one of our DNSs was still calling that particular IP. So we got a report that there was, our tool alerted us that there was confidential information with respect to that particular IP on the internet. So I started investigating. So I was one who got the ticket, so I started investigating it. Apparently I found out that we no longer own the IP, but because one of our DNSs is still tied to it, that's why we were alerted. But then when I started looking at it, I saw a complete back-end database, IPs, password, username, everything. Although what I did was, I then mailed the company, because they're somewhere in Saudi Arabia, right? So I mailed the company to say, have your security person or your IT person reach out to me, but you did, the person didn't, and there's really nothing I can do. And funnily enough, I think it looks like a high-end brand, right, somewhere in Saudi Arabia, but yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. But what I'm saying is that you'd be shocked, right, to some of the things that are still out there, and people actually have no idea that these things are out there, right? So, just like I've said here, we just can't block it, right? We're not, because once you do that, then you're forcing people to use alternative means, alternative measures of accessing the AI, and that is not what you want, right? So what we're actually encouraging is ethical use of it, which means state categorically what you want or how you want your people to use AI, right? And of course, if it's a policy and it's in effect, then anyone who goes against it is actually can come down under management, what's it called? So employees use personal hotspots in community bypassing your proxy entirely. Yeah. So yeah. Candidly speaking, I'm not sure my colleagues know about this. My colleagues are in SecOps, I'm not sure, because funny enough, we use content filtering, and then I think I was going through incognito once, and there was a website that we were not supposed to go there. Yeah, I was able to use it. So we need to be wary about that. Shadow AI usage increases because you've pushed it on the ground, and this same thing I'm saying. Consider disadvantage, productivity gap widens because you have told them not to use AI and things like that. And then trust erodes, security becomes the department of no. And then you still have no visibility, behavior just moves somewhere else, but most likely somewhere worse because you don't have visibility of what goes in there. So what would encourage or what would advise is enable guardrails, right? Approve enterprise AI with login and DLP integration baked in, so that, because like I said, we've approved the use of co-pilots within the environment. In as much as personally as a person, right, not the organization, so of course we'll have service level agreement with the likes of Microsoft, and they'll tell you that, oh, your data is secure and things like that, but we just looked at it as, either ways, we're using them, they're on the cloud, our data is with them already, right? Although the challenge I have about that is when we talk about things like data sovereignty, for instance, right? Microsoft doesn't have any data center in the United Kingdom. The least I know, I think, is one in Ireland, right? So, which still means that whatever data that we're processing with them is not anywhere in the United Kingdom, right? And with respect to things like the GDPR, the Data Protection Act of 2018, those data live somewhere else that is outside the United Kingdom. And of course, when, let me not say when, but if they are sequestered to released or to maybe by the FBI or CIA to access some of those data, some of them might not really have the liberty. But yeah, we'll talk about data sovereignty is an entirely different subject, but those are part of the things that we need to be wary about. Then there's a profit extension deployed and scoped to AI destination. So talking about this, a lot of organizations we included, use things like web filtering, content filtering. What we've done, or what most organizations do in that instance is, let's say for instance, use things like Netscope, Zscaler, and so you rely on them to tell you that, oh, this is an AI website, or this is an AI environment. But what if they have maybe erroneously miscategorized that website, right? You still find that your people would have access to that website despite the fact it has to do with AI. Or what if that website is new and for one reason or the other they have not been able to get ahead to categorizing that website as artificial intelligence? Your people will still be able to accept, and that is why when we talk about, so what we eventually did was to say, it might be a bit loose, but I think it was better than no guardrails in place, right? Where we now had to use regex to write our own regex in purview, basically in Microsoft, to say this is what we're looking for. So if something they paste here has HTML or div, we want to look at this and possibly block them. Or in some instances, we maybe don't want to block, but want to encrypt if they're sending it or mailing it to someone outside the organization. And then employees stay productive and on monitored platforms. So like I said, because I know today, if you're an administrator on the platform, you actually can have a way of seeing what your employee is actually pasting with respect to AI and things like that. And then shadow AI motivation is reduced because, yeah, like I said, then you have to approve it and then just create a policy and get ahead of it, get in front of it. So what to do? I think this should be the first thing. I don't think this should be negotiable really. Right? I think the first things we should do is create a policy which defines what exactly management expects. What does the SLT expect of the usage of AI and how it should be used at least ethically. Define what can and can't be pasted, human readable, role specific. Controls without policies are incomplete. Right, so then configure AI categories in your proxy web filtering. So in as much as sometimes we rely on these vendors to say, oh, this website is AI, that website is AI, I think occasionally it might be a good thing to have your security operations people or people in security go through what people are assessing and then be able to say, oh, we think this is AI or we think that's malicious. Don't rely completely on some of this and the CASB as well. Then deploy enterprise AI with prompt logging. So I know we have this in places like Microsoft Copilot, where you can say you later you can say, oh, I want to see what my people are assessing or what my people are pasting on the platform and things like that, and that would be available to you. So users aren't the enemy, really. I say this thing all the time. As at press time, I think by 2030 we should have about 30 odd billion devices connected to the internet. That's just another attack vector, as much as this is an attack vector as well. We might not be seeing this as an attack vector, but the truth is that there are more harm that can be coming to the organization just by the usage of AI. And the funny thing is, this is now no longer people trying to infiltrate the organization, but people sit down and then your data are coming to them just by having AI platforms. So we need to really, really be very wary because, yeah, don't get it wrong, this is another attack vector. We just are not seeing it as one. The employees' reality, they have deadlines, pressure, and like I said, some want to summarize emails, make it sound better, right? Some have codes, and sometimes, because I've seen some of those codes, sometimes a comma or just a full stop somewhere might break a code and you want to see what's going on sometimes. Then the task seems trivial. It's just an email, but sometimes you might forget to either, like I said, anonymize the data, remove what you don't want to be in the cloud or in the public domain and things like that. No policy exists, so no red line has been crossed. Yeah, so we've always talked about the policy. Personal AI is better or faster than approved tool. Don't tell my man. Then nobody told them pasting is equals to a governance event, because of course when there is a policy and you go against that policy, which means you've gone against what management asked you to do, and sometimes there might be consequences for that. So what security must do is to provide an AI tool that genuinely is good enough, to use. Good is relative, right? I've seen a lot of people say, oh, I prefer ChatGPT, or some people say, oh, I prefer Claude or Gemini, or there are the new ones, Kimi. A lot of AI tools are out there, and a lot of them are effective in different areas depending on what you're looking at, right? So if you want images or text, ChatGPT is probably if you want slide, Copilot or Kimi and things like that. So there is no one tool that does everything, but the truth is that you need to know where to draw the line, right? We cannot approve everything for anyone. And don't get me wrong, aside from Copilot, there are also maybe we'll have a group with an organization that say, oh, this should be an AI group who are allowed, people in that group are allowed access to different types of artificial intelligence tools that they want. But still, that is monitored. We know who are in those groups, and we can yank anybody off if we notice that they are not using it in the manner that they should be using it. Then publish clear, human readable, AI acceptable use policy or guidance. This is something that most organizations haven't really done. Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, but yeah, maybe we can also say this comes under our acceptable use of IT policy, which really doesn't. Yeah, but I think we need to be able to get in front of this and say, okay, this is what we have observed, over time, and this is what I think we should do, and that is how I think. By so doing, you probably might be saving the organization way more stress than just not having it in place. And besides, it doesn't really take anything to publish the policy, if I'm aware. It just takes for someone to sit down and write the thing. Yeah, but run targeted awareness, not just generic annual computer-based tests. It's like we do every other thing in security. One of the things we get to do is awareness, right? Create the awareness that these things are actually ways that organizations can get issues. So yeah, that's it. Make it easy to report accidental sharing without blame. Yeah, so let me tell you a story. Very recently, my manager, he's director of information security, clicked on a phishing link, right? And of course, security would have seen it, but he sent a mail to the organization. Why? To say, oh, I clicked on a phishing link, right? And I'm saying this so that everybody knows that even us in security are not, that we're not supermen. Sometimes we can also be. So what that does is that should anyone click on a phishing link, they're quick to say, oh, I did this, because they know that even if security can fall victim to phishing links, then so I think that's another way that we need to encourage staff to report anything they feel they've shared, either accidentally or, well, the malicious ones won't, because that's their plan, but at least if we're able to help the unaware people or the people who are not knowledgeable about these things, then the better for us. And treat first violations as learning events, not disciplinary ones. So we use automated tools in the office where you click on an email first, you click on the link first, it does nothing, you just get second one, you get one, and the third time you're enrolled for phishing awareness training and things like that. And that is just what we're saying here, that the first violation shouldn't be, don't make people feel like, some of them are not as aware or are not as tech savvy as we are, so they're just trying to get by their day and things like that. So punishing them for something that they did just because they're trying to be productive is not productive in any way as well. So that's it. The quietest data breach you'll ever have. No alerts, no malware, no incident response, just data living, right? That's it for me. So the question isn't, are you using AI? It is, does your control cover what's being shared, right? And that's it for me. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I love your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It kind of covers, from my perspective, the kind of exfiltration you get with pasting data in prompting. With AI, that's kind of 25% of the whole landscape. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on things like exfiltrating data by retrieval augmented generation in MCP type contexts and with agentic AI, because those are all AI landscapes where you can exfiltrate data to the wrong people. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
No.
Okay.
Don't mind, I'm just joking. The truth is, I think it goes back to what we've always said about policies, right? So if you know what your people are doing, you can then decide on, oh, I think this is the direction we need to travel, or this is where we need to be at, right? Talking about, okay, let's talk about the use of things like codex, because I think I mentioned it a couple of times, right? Where I know about codex because a couple of times I sometimes write. I'm a Python because I write Python as well, where just to help me sometimes, I have to plug my codex comes from my Chijioke directly to my VS Code. But the truth is that I don't know where that data is going. Is it just reading it and correcting it on instantly, or does it send my data somewhere that has to now analyze the code, right, and then give me back the response that I need? So this is what I don't know really. Right? But yeah, probably because I feel that there's nothing wrong with my data going, it's personal. But if it's proprietary, right, something that the organization needs, the organization needs to probably have answered the question that you asked or that I asked to say, how is this data being processed? They probably will have all the resources to find that out, right? But yeah, I know a lot actually, I said, talks about pasting data and things like that, so I really don't know. Like I said, AI is a hot button topic. It's you rarely go into a room now that you don't talk about AI. It's a conversation starter as well. I don't know if it's going to be what will end us all, but yeah, let's search and see how it goes. Yeah.
Really good, fantastic presentation. I think it goes the cultural bit about cultural education. I think a lot of the time users don't understand that their data they've got access to is proprietary or that it's PII or whatever. And this education piece.
Yeah.
As you say, the accidental user, the accidental user of AI, isn't aware that this data is being lost or
Yeah.
being exfiltrated.
Yeah.
And even when you try and explain that sometimes to people, they struggle to understand the concept of it all. And I think as with AI, everyone's like it's a tool they want to use, but so few people, so few of the users actually understand IT, and now AI is something else on top of that. They don't comprehend, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And even when you explain it to them, it's not something they're going to cope with.
Yeah.
So I think the governance bit and the controls you can put in are becoming as important now, even though I'm a big believer in cultural awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely correct, because I was talking with a colleague who recently joined an organization, and the organization is really old. I don't want to call names and all that. They didn't have, in fact, he is the first person who's working there as a cybersecurity analyst. He was recruited as a data protection officer and things like that. Why am I saying that? Why I'm saying that? So I had several conversations with him, and I told him that you're going to make a lot of enemies, right? Because these people don't have this in place. They are like dinosaurs, right? They are used to doing things a certain way, right? Now you're going to go there and you're going to say, oh, I'm going to enforce this, I'm going to enforce that. A lot of them probably might be looking for ways to kick you out of the organization, because to them, you're going to make their work a lot more difficult, right? I've mentioned here about how we implemented Purview, and something that was supposed to check what you place in the browser for a couple of seconds, and the entire organization went nuts. Everybody talked about productivity, how it was affecting their productivity and things like that. So there are people who would not, there are people who have to change. They don't want anything to change. They want things to remain the way they are, right? And I know I have this conversation with my manager where I tell him that the truth is that the ball falls back to you, right? So when anything to happen, you're the one who is going to bear the brunt of the whole thing, right? So I think make enemies when you can. So we use sort of what we call the carrot on the stick, you know. So you go to them and you explain that, oh, this is, I think, what something we should do. You try and be nice, talk to them and things like that. But when they don't want to, you probably would have to enforce it, right? And all that. I know, like I said, we spent about a year collecting data and trying to make the LP work. So he initially said, oh, turn this off for now. You're not turning off everything, but turn this off for now, and then we'll work on that and get back to it. So yeah, you're right. The cultural change, in fact, the truth is that awareness is everything that leads to it, right? There are people who would still, but at least the number reduces. just like the same thing we're always doing with, at least most organizations are putting in front of phishing now. There are simulated phishing attacks that organizations do, things like that. You can also use that in terms of training people on how to use AI and ethical ways to use AI and things like that. So yeah, awareness is part of it and culture as well.